Yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai 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 lai lai lai. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is,
How good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it
to
is
be together on this day. How good it is,
how good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is
to be together on this day.
Hine matov u'manayim shevet
shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is,
how good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is
to be together on this day. How good it is,
how good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is to be together on this day.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Shalom,
Shalom Aleichem,
Shalom,
Shalom Aleichem,
Shalom,
Shalom Aleichem,
Shalom
Aleichem.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's so nice to be here. I was just talking with Richard actually, and this week was hot and hard. I felt myself, I think I was inside for much of it, and that's really unlike me. And so I'm just feeling very, very grateful to be here. And it's a very Jewish feeling to feel grateful to be here. We're commanded to wake up every morning and say, Modeh, Moda ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam. I am grateful just to be able to stand, sit before God, before other people, and before ourselves. And so on this Shabbat morning, I'm saying Modeh ani lefanecha. I'm really grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be leading alongside Cantor Patty Linsky again. We're really, really glad to have her back.
Thank you. And I'm saying Moda ani lefanecha.
Beautiful.
For the same reasons.
Beautiful. And this minyan will be about ideally taking stock in where we are in our Jewish calendar as we are quickly approaching the High Holy Day season. We're in the High Holy Day season. We're quickly approaching the High Holidays. And so hopefully we'll have time for reflection, we'll have time for meditation, and we'll have time for deep learning as well. So we'll begin on page 68 with Modeh, Moda ani.
Moda ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechezarta b'nishmati b'chemla, b'chemla. Rabba emunatech, Rabba emunatech, Moda ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam.
אמונתי בחמלה, בחמלה, רבה אמונתך, רבה אמונתך. Ma Tovu on page 74, our blessing for the morning, for goodness, for being awake.
Ma tovu,
Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ani berov chastecha, avo beitecha, Eshtachavelecha kodshecha be'yiratecha. Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, mishkenotecha Yisrael. On page 76, we'll join in Asher Yatzar together.
I thank you for my life, body and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Chol basar umafli la'asod.
Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh chol basar mafli la'asod. Baruch atah רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות.
We'll turn the page for Nisim B'chol Yom, our daily miracles, and we will recite these antiphonally, which means if you are on stage right, so if you are Jana and Anne to your right, you can start with Cantor Linsky, and if you are Marguerite and Michael to stage left, you can follow with me.
Way too complicated? Are you still on your meds? Oh, okay. That's why. All right. That's okay.
We'll begin on page 80.
It's all good. It's all good. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lesechvivina lahavchin ben yom uvein laila.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivri.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten li'aif koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir sheina me'enai utnuma me'afal pai.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tselem Elohim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael betif'ara.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. So a quick piece of Torah to learn, because we just recited the blessing for studying Torah, is that something that's really interesting on this page 86, we can actually look at it. We only recite about half the blessing. We stop. And I don't know if that's just the Minyan minhag that we have here, but there are multiple types of blessings in the rabbinic tradition. There is what's called a long blessing, which is matbea aruka, which is this. So it starts with Baruch atah Adonai, then there's some phrase, and then there's more, and then it ends at the bottom of the page. You can see at the bottom, Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah la'amo Yisrael. So this is a long blessing. There are also short blessings in the rabbinic tradition. We have like hamotzi lechem min haaretz, like that's it. It's just that. And we also have a blessing that forms like a part of a series, which is like in the Amidah, there are blessings that don't start with Baruch atah Adonai, but end with Baruch atah Adonai. So there are multiple types of blessings that we have, and what I want to invite everyone to do, this will take, I promise, 30 seconds. But as we're in this month of Elul, there are all these kinds of blessings in our tradition, and I think there's actually wisdom in that there are blessings that we can sort of hold on to. And so take about 30 seconds, turn to the person next to you, and ask yourselves and ask each other, what is one blessing that you're seeking as you're preparing for Rosh Hashanah? What is one blessing that you are seeking as you prepare for Rosh Hashanah? We'll take 30 seconds. Because I think it's there. I think giving it to myself is the blessing that I want.
That's a great gift you can give yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yours?
Yeah. I prefer yours.
You can have two if you want.
Okay, thank you.
We'll wrap up the blessing that we're thinking of. And my hope for all of us in this month of Elul is that we can make time and we can carve out time for ourselves to really seek these blessings that we need for ourselves and for one another.
71.
We'll turn to page 71. We'll do some Siddur acrobatics. We'll turn back for Haleli Nafshi et Adonai. 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 Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Ah, hallelujah, Adonai, b'chayai.
Azamera lelohai ve'odi. Hallelujah, Adonai, b'chayai. Azamera lelohai, azamera lelohai, azamera lelohai ve'odi. Haleli nafshi et Adonai. Haleli nafshi et Adonai. Haleli nafshi et Adonai. Haleli nafshi et Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Page 100, page 100, hallelujah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 El Bekodsho, hallelujah, Birki Ha'uzo, hallelujah, Bikurotav, hallelujah, Kerohudlo, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei shama. Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei teruah. Kol hanshama tehallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
The Baruch can be found on page 108. We'll rise in all the ways we are able.
Am I awake?
Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared?
Ya
La
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 la,
la la, la 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 la,
ya la 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 la,
la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la,
ya la 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 la,
ya la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch
Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la,
ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
Page 110.
אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם יוצר אור ובורא חושך עושה שלום ובורא את הכל.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו,
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם יוצר אור ובורא חושך עושה שלום
אדוני
הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם יוצר אור ובורא חושך עושה שלום ובורא את הכל.
On page 112, we'll read together in the middle of the page in English. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion, on account of our forebears, whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah.
הערננו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחל לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש, ולא נקלל, ולא ניכשל לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בתחנון נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך.
והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות
לארצנו.
כי אל פועל ישועת אתה, ובנו בחרת, וקירבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך יחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע
ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
שמע ישראל
אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם
בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
On the following page, 117, we'll read responsively. If we can hear the words from Sinai, then love will flow from us, and we shall serve all that is holy with all our intellect and all our passion and all our life.
If we can serve all that is holy, we shall be doing all that humans can to help the rains to flow, the grasses to be green, the grains to be golden like the sun, and the rivers to be filled with life once more.
All the children of God shall eat, and there will be enough. But if we turn from Sinai's words and serve only what is profane and common, making gods of our own comfort or power, then the holiness of life will contract for us. Our world will grow inhospitable.
Let us lace these words into our passion and our intellect and bind them as a sign upon our hands and eyes. Let us write them in mezuzot upon our doors and teach them to our children.
Let us honor the generations that came before us, keeping the promise for those yet to be.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohim, Emet. A poem by the poet Tigan Gilaim. You've split open the sea, creating a path for me, delivering us from slavery to bring us to a sweet and savory land. We sang out songs of freedom. Mi chamocha, who is like you? You've done it before and you can do it again. I am a slave to my own mind. And sometimes I lose hope and it makes me feel like I'm going blind. Despite the unsettling friction in daily life, still I sing, Mi chamocha, who is like you? You've done it before and you can do it again. I will watch and listen for your voice, for guidance, to continue my journey. It is not over yet. Mi chamocha, who is like you? I have to say there is no one quite like the God that the Israelites have, the God that we have, and the God that we all aspire to have. Mi chamocha can be found a few pages later on page 122.
באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש. נורא
תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא.
שירה חדשה
שיבחו גאולים,
הארץ שפת
הים,
יחד כולם הודו, והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך באלים קודש, נהדר קודש. הנורא תהילות אוסף בלב, נורא תהילות אוסף בלב. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובדכן עמך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וכרזל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו.
האל הקדוש. Ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. מקדשי שביעי, מקדשי שביעי, ישבעו ויתענגו, ישבעו ויתענגו, בטובך ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, עמדת ימים אותו קראת, למעשה בראשית, למעשה בראשית. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. יא לה לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה לה, יא לה 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 לה לה. That was fun.
We'll continue with the rest of our Amidah silently. We can remain standing or be seated as we're pleased.
Bless you. Bless you. שאלתי מאת אדוני, אחת שאלתי אותה אבקש, אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אחת שאלתי אותה אבקש, שבתי שבתי בבית אדוני, שבתי שבתי כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו, לחזות בנועם אדוני, to gaze upon the beauty of Adonai. One thing I ask you, Adonai, to be with you all of my life. One thing I ask you, Adonai, to be with you all of my life.
Yasher koach. We're about to enter into our Torah service, and soon we'll welcome Rabbi Bill Cutter for a Devar Torah, and we'll invite Glenn Gottlieb up to read words of Torah. Before we do that, we are going to take the Torah out of our ark, and I'm seeking some volunteers. If you are interested in helping to take the Torah out of the ark and do a hakafa around the community, the kahal, that's one volunteer. And then also at the end of the Torah service, we're seeking someone who has a very strong right arm. You don't have to have a strong left arm, but you need to have a strong right arm to lift the Torah, and then someone to also help wrap the Torah as well. So 3 volunteers. Yeah, it's the curse of Deuteronomy. We have blessings and curses, but really, this is a curse. Any volunteers? What do you want to do, Jordan? Hakafa, okay. You want to lift, Alan? Alan's been working out his right arm. Anyone want to wrap? Anyone want the honor of wrapping? All right, Matt. Beautiful. We'll invite up Jordan for our hakafa to take the Torah out of our ark. Our Torah service begins on page 244, and we'll rise in all the ways that we're able.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein k'ma'asecha, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אב הרחמים, היטיבה ברצונך את ציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים. כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך ערום ונישא, אדון עולמים. כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה, תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה, תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד, אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו. גדלו לאדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו, רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו, רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו. Shalom, 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 shalom. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all of its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all of its supporters are happy. Shalom, 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 shalom.
Please be seated. I'm now thrilled to invite up Rabbi Bill Cutter to offer some words of Torah. Nice catch. This is where we're going to be. You can sit. You can sit, you can stand, up to you.
I'm sorry? I took my tallit off. Yes. So, can you hear me? No. Okay. There's a lot of memory in this weekend. We finished the memory of the destruction of the temple a couple of weeks ago. Rabbi Goldberg, I'm sorry, how's that? All right, thank you. The portion ends this week, as Rabbi Bernie wrote in her memo, with this slight oxymoron of remember what Amalek did to you and wipe out his memory. It's a trick of the Hebrew language. It's not quite an oxymoron because the word remember works in several ways. But it is also the weekend of 9/11. And so I'm taking the liberty of asking if we could have a few seconds of silence and standing in memory of those who were lost some years ago, remembering both their bravery and their innocence, and maybe even the Amalek motives that installed that awful event. Thank you. I am going to sit. I'm sorry, I'm not doing this for. There we go. Is that better? Okay. So what are our transgressions for this year? What are you asking forgiveness for in a couple of weeks? Each of us, it seems, is separate, individual from the community, but our prayers and our Torah portion speak collectively. What are we remembering, and what are we forgetting? What did I do wrong? And what did I do wrong? What are we remembering, and what are we forgetting? This week's portion says to remember what the Amaleks did to you, but wipe out their memory. Deuteronomy, for sure, is a kind of hodgepodge, as my brilliant colleague Josh Garraway calls it, of guilt and forgiveness, responsibility and assessment of the punishments for responsibilities not met. Some of the obligations make good moral sense to our modern way of thinking. Some of them sound quaint and antiquated. Perhaps the word antiquated would be a better word. Beat up your rebellious child. Discredit the bride who has no signs of virginity. Don't wear linen and wool together. Some are nice to think about. Take care of your neighbor's lost animal. Save a lonely bird. Rejoice in the forgiveness that the prophet Isaiah, whom at other synagogues we read today, promising that after being bawled out for 3 weeks, we are now in 7 weeks of being forgiven. Through it all, and all this hodgepodge and complication, one lonely line in this week's Torah portion stuck with me from year after year, and it's more years than I hate to recall, but it's 57. And that is, if you build a house, be sure that you build a parapet for it. What is a parapet? Not a bird that you give your little grandchild. A parapet is a kind of a fence around the rooftop. The line stands out because of its elevated moral position, one that has probably informed Western civil law for the last 2,000 years. But it doesn't really account for the elevated slabs of concrete in Florida, where banisters and parapets would not have made any difference. But perhaps after all, we can apply this portion and this issue of the parapet in very, very modern ways. But we like, as moderns, we like to hear, and our Social Action Center likes to trumpet it, what a wonderful tradition we have because we believe in saving birds. We don't like to hear about some of the silly laws. We don't like to hear about checking on people's virginity. We don't like to deal with material that seems out of date or even wrong morally. We kind of turn our faces. So parapets make the finals, and stoning rebellious children doesn't make the finals. Helping a neighbor's forlorn donkey makes the finals, but having a bunch of old men check on a damsel's virginity seems cruel and silly. We like being the grandparents of such a responsible principle as torts. We are sometimes ashamed that we spend so much capital defending high-handed men, but here they are, the torts and the accused woman, shall I say tarts, in the same Torah portion for a couple of weeks before Rosh Hashanah. I guess we have to remember some things, and we have to learn to forget other things. According to this portion, which Glenn will be reading, sometime in ancient history, we're not sure exactly when that was, our people decided to protect the fellow who was out walking on his rooftop, or the wife looking for her fisherman husband to return to the shores of Rhode Island or Nantucket. We worry about little kids who might fall into our swimming pools, and so we build a fence. But we often expunge the other material, or we gloss it over, or interpret it to death. The wicked son gets a beating. Let's skip over that sentence. The bird loses her young. You have to take care of the children. You shouldn't mix fabric. Well, we interpret it to mean not that you don't wear linsey-woolsey, the old Quaker way of talking about that. We don't have to skip over it because we can say, let us dress in ecologically sound ways. But don't be too scrupulous if there's a sale. What is a modern Jew to do with this mix of the crude and the refined? Well, for one thing, we read it and we read it again, and then we read it again. And that often seems to be the main thing in Jewish life, doesn't it? And that when Deuteronomy actually in Latin means, read it again. Another reading, another sensibility, another chance. A drosh on a drosh. Don't beat the olive tree. It's not good for the tree, but beat that Torah verse until it suits you. And indeed, it is another chance that characterizes our approach to the new year, where the prophet's voice intervenes after Tisha B'Av and assures us that God is a God of mercy, and the high holidays will find all forgiven. To quote Isaiah, which we won't read this morning, I will expunge all your sins, and I will be your great, merciful protector. But you had better build a parapet, some kind of fence that prevents innocent kids from falling. But as the Broadway composers Richard Maltby and David Shire have written about forlorn lovers, what am I doing out on that rooftop? What am I doing all by myself? Probably no parapet there. Stay off of that roof. And that's what Professor Richard Hecht, who graces us this morning with his presence of UC Santa Barbara, asked me just last week. When were those little people with those little houses building rooftops? Whether the houses are as little as they seem on an archaeological dig, sometimes amazing to notice that, or whether the people were really small, as anthropology sometimes argues, we still have to build a parapet. So you all know the drill. We have to extrapolate to a more modern sensibility. We have to build the fence so the kids won't fall into the pool, build banisters for our aging parents, double-check the bulging tuna cans for botulism, see that our tarts have not gone sour before you serve them for dessert. Oh, a certain kind of forgiveness is inevitable, But if you disobey the laws of obligation and responsibility, torts in other words, you still have to pay a fine. You might even have to go to jail. Your forgiveness is metaphysical, because God is doing it, but the concrete reality in the hands of the district attorney is a little bit of time in jail. And those whose concrete crumbles should go to jail. So no matter how many times you spin this Torah portion and spin it again and again, we better think twice before building without a parapet, before saving a few dollars by not having a fence around our swimming pools, for using clothing that is ecologically destructive. So I propose the following. So rich is this simple idea that we moderns right here, the folks here, could pick one example of a parapet or a parapet-like thing that we've ignored in the past year, and we promise to adopt it for the next year. Turn it, and even change it. You may even have to expunge a thought here and there, but by all means, remember the parapet.
Let's offer some snaps for Rabbi Cutter. I want to say a personal thank you, and I found that it was. I mean, Glenn will probably share a little bit about this, but it was challenging to find a reading that might have been like in line with these moral sensibilities that you're talking about. And there are a lot of laws in this parsha that don't sit well with me, and there are a lot of laws that do. And I think your question of like how do we bring that into our modern age is that we turn it again. And I think interlaid with your just like grasp of creating poetry and torts and tarts and concrete and building and destroying, I'm very grateful for your wisdom this morning, and I know we all are too. So thank you. We are now going to, we're going to read some Torah. We're going to read some Torah. That's what we're doing next. And we have 3 aliyot this morning, and our aliyot are group aliyot. So I'm going to read the description of all 3 of them, and if you feel called, when I invite up the aliyot, you can join for that particular aliyah. Our first aliyah, the name of the aliyah is, the name of the Torah portion we have is Ki Tetzeh, which means when you go out, and the words are Ki Tetzeh la milchama al oivecha, which means when the Israelites go out against war, or against their enemies for war. And there's a set of rules about how to treat your enemies when you've taken them captive, and it's a set of rules about how to treat your captives in many aspects of daily living. So it could be relationships, it could be family responsibility, it could be work, grief, how you allow your captive to grieve, and other types of justice. And the medieval commentator Sforno says, El chutza la'aretz. It's when you go out to war beyond the boundaries of your land. And so for this first aliyah, if you're in a moment of your life where you feel like you are perhaps beyond the boundaries of your land, you might not know where you are, you might not be sure what you're doing right now, and you might be seeking a bit of help or a bit of support or a bit of strength, this first aliyah is for you to be able to go chutza la'aretz. Later in the portion, we have, for our second aliyah, we have the Torah saying, Ki tavo b'cherem re'echa. When you enter another person's vineyard, you can eat as many grapes as you want until you are full, but you can't put any in your vessel to take home for you. No doggy bags, indeed. There are boundaries for celebrating, but the Torah tells us nonetheless that we should still celebrate. We should still eat grapes when we're given that opportunity. And so if you are celebrating a simcha, if it's a special occasion, if it's a birthday, an anniversary, this aliyah is for you. The third aliyah I wanted to relate to our Haftarah portion, which comes from Isaiah chapter 54. The 7 weeks following Tisha B'Av, which we are in right now, we're in the middle of it, we read a series of Haftarot from Isaiah that all focus on themes of consolation. And these Haftarot are meant to comfort a nation that have just mourned the destruction, the loss of their own sacred space, their temple, their entire land, really their people, and they've been exiled. And this particular portion involves God saying to the Israelites, "In slight anger for a moment, I hid my face from you, but with kindness everlasting, I'll take you back in love." And this is a promise from God to the Jewish people. And so for this third Aliyah, if there's a promise that you're hoping to enact, or if there is a resolution or some sort of element that you want to change in this new year, then this third Aliyah is for you. So as a reminder, the first Aliyah is if you are beyond the boundaries of your land and you're seeking support, that's the first Aliyah. The second Aliyah is if you want to eat some grapes and celebrate, that's the second Aliyah. And the third Aliyah is if you are seeking a promise, if you are seeking to promise or to resolve something in this new year. For our first Aliyah, well, Glenn is already up here, thank you. And you said you wanted to share a few words about, yeah. All right. Go for it.
The risk of lengthening all of these proceedings. As Rabbi Goldberg alluded to, when we were looking at verses that I felt like reading today, there are an awful lot of verses in here that weren't so palatable. So we had a hard time picking a section. I mean, there's some that are nice, but there's not a section of 8 or 9 verses together that, made a nice reading. We finally settled on this one. And then I started noticing some interesting things about the Hebrew, because that's one of the things I try to figure out. So particularly for modern Hebrew speakers, there are some traps if you're listening to this and not reading along with the text, because particularly in the third portion of this, there's avot is discussed a lot of times, but it's not avot with an aleph at the beginning and a taf at the end. It doesn't mean fathers or his father. It's actually avot with an ayin at the beginning and a tet at the end, which has to do with a pledge. So that's one sort of interesting thing. There's also, in the last part, it refers to ish ani, which is not I am a man, ish aleph. This is ish ayin, again, meaning a poor man. But sort of in the more metaphysical sense, I also noticed that a lot of these, like the name of the parsha, ki tetzeh, we translate, it's a lot of if-then, phrases here. But in modern Hebrew, ki doesn't mean if, it means because. There is im ish ani in here, if a poor man, so far. But mostly it says ki, so on and so forth, which would be because something or other, not if something or other, as we translate it in English. So I just thought it would be interesting to project that into saying that a lot of these have to do with not something that may or may not happen if. It's because this is going to happen, this is what you do. Just my own, whatever. So that's mine.
Amazing. For our first Aliyah, I invite anyone who is seeking to go beyond the boundaries of their land, if they are seeking strength, or if you are seeking support, or if you are seeking anything that perhaps Torah can give you, we'll invite you up for our group Aliyah that we'll all do together. Yep. There you go. All right. Are we ready?
Anybody want to?
Go for it, right here. אחת, שתיים, שלוש. ברכו את אדוני. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Whoa. It's fading. It's too long. All right, we're going to resort to self-help, as they say. I'm good. Do three things at once. כי ייקח איש אישה חדשה, לא יצא בצבא, ולא יעבור עליו לכל דבר, נקי יהיה לביתו שנה אחת, ושימח את אשתו אשר לקח. לא יחבל רחיים ורחב, כי נפש הוא חובל. That's where I'm stopping.
Before you go, you four have made a conscious decision. You five have made a conscious decision to come up here and be blessed with an aliyah. And so my blessing for you all is that you may be chutz la'aretz. You may be outside the boundaries of whatever land you are living in right now. And my blessing for you all is that you can find strength in your community. You can find strength in your family. You can find strength in your friends. And you can find strength in anything that you're holding right now. You can find strength in that as you enter into these high holidays. So that's my blessing for you. For our second aliyah, we will invite those who are seeking to celebrate by eating grapes in their vineyard. If you have a simcha, if you have anything special that you want to offer, this is an aliyah for you, for us. I'll take part in this aliyah too. Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
כי ימצא איש גונב נפש מאחיו מבני ישראל והתעמר בו ומאחרו ומה הגנב ההוא וביארת הרע מקרבך. הישמר בנגע הצרעת לשמור מאוד ולעשות ככל אשר יורו איתכם הכהנים הלוויים כאשר צוויתי תשמרו לעשות. זכור את אשר עשה אדוני אלוהיך למרים בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. So I'm a part of this aliyah too, but I think I'm going to let Cantor Linsky share on behalf of both of us. But if you want to share your simcha with our community, you can. It is optional. You do not have to.
Well, I'm not going to be here for the next time that the Minyan meets because I'm going to be with my daughter, who is going to be 70 years old.
Amazing.
So anyway, that is certainly a great celebration.
Fantastic. Do you two want to go next?
Fine.
Okay.
Similar to Petrie, we're going to be in Durango with our kids and celebrate holidays, but also celebrate my daughter and son-in-law's anniversary and my granddaughter's 16th birthday.
So I too will be away next Minyan. My son called me the other day and he said, "Mom, would you like to do a road tour with me?" It's a combination business trip for him. It's going to be an amazing 11 days. We're starting in Manhattan, going up to Tarrytown to visit my other son, then heading up to Westport, Connecticut to visit a good friend of his, then off to the Cape. We'll spend 4 days in Cape Cod and Nantucket, and then we're going to go up to my grandson's school in New Hampshire, and then back to Boston, and then home. So it'll be a whirlwind, and when he said, "Mom, you want to go?" I said, "Sure."
Before I share what Rabbi was talking about before, I want to just share a couple of things. We just had a great 8-day trip to New York and saw our daughter Kayla and helped her move into her new place and went to the New York Open for one night. And I'm now hooked on tennis. And we came back to find that our oldest daughter, Eliana, just took a job in New York as the new consultant for inclusive education with the Jewish Education Project, which is a pretty cool, wonderful thing. And we've had many simchas in our family, lots of cousins getting married, anniversaries, blah, blah, blah. So at the cocktail party one night, I was speaking with my cousin, Ron Wolfson. Many of you might know him. And we were talking about, where do you work and what are you doing? And I said, yeah, I'm Leo Beck. I'm working with Rabbi Scott Goldberg. And he said, Scott Goldberg? And I said, yeah, Scott Goldberg. And he said, did you know that the two of you are cousins by marriage? We are third cousins because we married into the Wolfson family. So now I have a new cousin, and so do you.
Pretty good.
That's our simcha. That's so cool.
That is a really hard act to follow. My dad would have been 97 years old tomorrow.
Awesome stuff. Okay. Wait.
So this is just an opportunity to, as we have Torah in our midst, to hold on to its words and to celebrate with all the grapes that we want to eat, but not take a doggy bag, and know that we have space in our tradition to celebrate and to share our celebrations with one another. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cuz.
We'll now offer we'll turn in our Sidurim to offer a Mishaberach L'cholim, which can be found on page 253. And if you're thinking of someone who is in need of healing, or if you yourself need some strength or are in need of healing, I invite you to share the name of the person you're thinking of out loud or in your heart as our eyes meet.
Gary Stern's knee. Judy and Jerry Weissman. Josh Brook. Lenny Newell. Joan White.
niece Nama Fryman, my brother-in-law Ariel Pellet, my cousin Mike Wapner, Karen and Tom, Jerry and Judy, and Josh.
David ben Basha Herschel, Miriam Bad Rachel Basha, and Mari Fuentes.
We'll take all of our names said out loud, said in our hearts, and we'll offer a Misha Berach Lecholim for all of them. Misha Berach Avoteinu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor habracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Offer a refuah shlema, a full and speedy healing for all those who are in need. For our third aliyah, we'll invite up anyone who has a promise, who has a resolution, who has some sort of part of their life that they would like to change over this next upcoming year. So that will be our third aliyah. I guess Jordan's the only one changing. That's true. All right, go ahead. Achat, shtayim, shalosh. Baruchu et Adonai et hamborach. Baruch Adonai hamborach leolam vaed. Baruch Adonai hamborach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
כי יימצא איש גונב נפש מאחיו מבני ישראל, והתעמר בו ומכרו, ומת הגנב ההוא, וביארת הרעה מקרבך. הישמר בנגע הצרעת לשמור מאוד, ולעשות בכל אשר יורו איתכם הכהנים הלוויים, כאשר ציוויתי תשמרו לעשות זכור את אשר עשה אדוני עליך למרים בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים. כי תישא בירך משט מאומר לא תבוא על ביתו לאבות אבותו. בחוץ תעמוד האיש אשר אתה נושא בו, יוציא עליך את האבות החוצה. ואם איש עני הוא לא תשכב אבותו. השב תשיב לו את האבות, כבוא השמש, ושכב בשלמתו וברכך, ולך תהיה צדקה לפני אדוני אלוהיך.
Baruch atah
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Of course.
That I realized when everybody was talking about their trips that mine was coming up already. I thought it wasn't so soon. But on Tuesday, I'm leaving for Wisconsin for 2 birthdays of great-grandchildren. One is going to be their brothers. One is going to be 1, and one is going to be 4. They're 2 weeks apart. But it's a schlep to go to Washington Island. You have to really be motivated. You know, you fly into somewhere, you travel 200 miles, then you get on a ferry, you know, and then you finally get to where you're going. But my grandkids are living their dream. They're farmers. He's a philosophy guy. She's got her PhD in literature, but they're living their dream. So that's where I'm going, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Trudy. Thanks, Trudy. So our aliyah this morning is all about wanting to change yourself, wanting to make some sort of promise that's new for you. And in the same way that Isaiah says that I will comfort you no matter what happens in destruction, in trauma, in grief, my blessing for you is that you can also find comfort, and that you can also find hope in that you can change yourself, and that you can make promises, and you can make yourself anew in this new year as we approach Rosh Hashanah. Amen. You got it. We'll now lift our Torah high for everyone in our community to see, and we will rise as we are able. No problem. I got you.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל, על פי אדוני ביד משה. יא לי לי לי, יא לי 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 לי, יא לי 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 לי, יא לי לי לי.
Yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai מחזיקים בה ותומכיה פירושה דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיך שלום השיבנו אדוני Kadesh, Kadesh Yameinu, Kadesh Yameinu, Kekedem.
We'll be seated. Actually, we're gonna do an anonymous poll. So if we can close our eyes. Right now, the time is almost 11:20. I've prepared a study. I love to teach and I love to do the study. I also want to respect that people can, if they have plans and they want to get out on time, they can. So we have two options. We have three options. The first option is we can do the study now, and Minyan might go a little longer. The second option is we can do the study in the salon when we do a picnic, if people brought food for a picnic. That's the second option. Or the three is we can just postpone it to next in 2 weeks. All right, close your eyes. Raise your hand if you would like number one, to do the study now. Hands down. Raise your hand if you would like to do the study in the salon during picnic. Hands up. Hands down. Raise your hand if you would like to postpone the study till 2 weeks from now. Hands down. We're going to do the study now. So I invite, we're going to do this. We're going to do this fairly quick, because I'm trying to please the masses. It's not easy. I think I printed enough, but if not, you can share with a neighbor. This study is not based on the weekly parsha. This study is based on what is called the Shlosh Esrei Midot. And the Shlosh Esrei Midot, what we will learn about where it comes from, but it is specifically an element of the High Holy Day liturgy that comes to fruition during the month of Elul, in which we find ourselves right now. And our first text, if we can see it, is there someone who is willing and able to read just our first text that's entitled Entering the High Holy Days by Rabbi Dr. Ruvain Hammer? Go for it, Peachy.
The Machzor Vitri, an 11th century work describing the yearly cycle of observances and prayers, tell us that it is a custom to begin on the Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah, to rise early to the synagogue before the sun rises, and beg for mercy.
Beautiful. Thank you. Rabbi Dr. Ruvain Hammer is a liturgist, a modern liturgist, who has written extensively about how Jews engage in the holiday cycle, in worship, through liturgy. And this work, the Machzor Vitri, it's an 11th century prayer book, and it incorporates all the legalistic rulings composed by Rabbi Simcha of Vitry, who was a French scholar and actually a disciple of the medieval commentator Rashi that we like to quote all the time. And the word Machzor is it's like a Siddur, but it's used for the High Holy Days. And this Machzor Vitri, it includes all the types of prayers that we do during the High Holy Days. And it also talks about like why we do them. So it's kind of a machzor, but it's also kind of like a how to do Judaism. And here, what we're talking about, what Peachy read, the Machzor Vitri says, it is a custom to begin on the Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah, to rise early to synagogue before the sun rises, and beg for mercy. What is the Machzor Vitri talking about? I heard it. Rabbi Goldstein said it's slichot, which is a plug for next Saturday night. If you're around for slichot, we have a beautiful slichot service, a beautiful ceremony. It's the first opportunity during the high holidays where we can hear the choir and the cantors saying everything that they prepared. And we also changed all the Torah coverings from their colorful clothing to their white clothing. All to say, so on Slichot, we beg for mercy. And there's a text in the Tana Devei Eliyahu Zuta, which is it is a midrash that comes from the 9th or 10th century, and no one knows where it was composed. I think it's probably composed from an amalgam of different places, and there's actually this text is referenced in the Talmud, which is interesting because the Talmud was thought to be composed before when the Tana Devei Eliyahu Zuha was supposed to be composed. So it really begs the question of this text probably comes from earlier texts too, and so Tana Devei Eliyahu Zuta talks all about the systems by which humans live. So there are chapters on Torah, like how to live through law. There's a chapter on divine reward and punishment, like what happens if you do good, what happens if you don't do good according to the Torah. There's a chapter all about what's called the Kisei HaKavod, which is the high throne. So it's an entire chapter saying that God is actually in charge of our universe. There's an entire chapter on Mashiach, the one who will come to redeem when the world needs redemption, the one who will come to redeem. And there's an entire chapter on the temple. And the Tana Devei Eliyahu Zuta, it's a midrash. So when there are questions in the Torah, when there are questions like we don't know what happens, the midrash tries to fill in those gaps. And this midrash tells a story. And is there anyone who's willing to read this story? Karen, go for it.
David knew that the temple was destined to be destroyed and that the sacrificial system would be abolished as a result of the iniquities of Israel. David was distressed for Israel. With what would they effect atonement? The Holy Blessed One said, "When troubles come down upon Israel because of their iniquities, let them stand together before me as one band and confess their iniquities before me and recite before me the order of the Slichot, and I will answer them." Rabbi Yochanan said, "The Holy Blessed One revealed this in the verse." See the next text.
So this is what the Holy Blessed One revealed when troubles come down on Israel, and because they have sinned, this is what we're supposed to recite during Slichot. The next text, we can actually start the second line of Hebrew, or the last word in the first line of Hebrew. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon V'Fesha V'Chata V'Nakeh. On Slichot, we'll repeat it. We'll repeat it over and over again. Those words, what do these words say? Is there anyone over here who's willing to read what those words mean in English? Yeah. Go for it, Marilyn.
Passed before him and proclaimed, Adonai passed before him and proclaimed, Adonai, Adonai, a God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquity of parents upon children and children's children upon the 3rd and 4th generations.
Beautiful. Thanks, Marilyn. So that's a good question. So Marilyn asked, is this the prayer where we go like this? There's another prayer where we go like this. That's the Al Chet Shechatani Lefanecha, that I have sinned before you. And then there's the vidui, there's a long vidui, which is that, and then there's a short vidui where we sing, so this is a separate part of the liturgy which enters its way before Yom Kippur, before Rosh Hashanah. We're in it right now. It's in Elul. And so this is the big part of the liturgy that we're going to hear during the Slichot service, and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but it starts in Slichot, and it offers all of these traits of God. We say, Adonai, Adonai, God is compassionate, God is gracious, God is slow to anger, God is abounding in kindness, abounding in faithfulness, and extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgives iniquity, forgives transgression, and forgives sin. There's probably an entirely separate Torah study that we could do on the last half of that portion, which is not found in the Shlosh Esrei Midot, because God doesn't forgive all sins. God doesn't remit all sins. There are some punishments that happen. Like if you do something that might be impermissible, you might still get punished. That's what the Torah says. But what the Torah says also is that everything, God is kind, God is compassionate to the 1,000th generation. And the question is, where does this come from in Torah? This is just a huge line. And the question is, where does this come from? We're actually going to flip the page. 2 chapters earlier in the book of Exodus, we'll read... Great. 2 chapters earlier in the book of Exodus, is someone willing to read the story that comes immediately preceding the Shlosh Esrei Midot? We'll go Sally.
Exodus 32:1. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who shall go before us. For that fellow Moses, the man who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him."
So what's this text talking about? That's right, the golden calf. This text is talking about the golden calf. So multiple chapters earlier, we have Moses ascending the Har Sinai, and the people of Israel don't really know what to do without Moses. So they rebel. They see that Moses has been gone for many chapters, and time works in strange ways in the Torah. And so 10 chapters later, the people are frustrated, and the people don't know what to do, and there is no God for Moses, or there is no God for the people of Israel. And so what happens is they say, they go to Aaron and they rebel, and they say, let's gather all our gold together. Let's gather all our silver, all of our valuables. We'll put it together and we'll worship this being, because the being that we used to worship is gone. We don't know where that God is, and that God took our leader. So why would we worship that being? And so then what happens is, we know the story that Moses comes down. The tablets are shattered because he's so angry, and he has to go back up on the mountain. And when he goes back up on the mountain, that's what God says. God says, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed. That even after something as abominable as creating a God out of gold, something that we're not supposed to do. We're not supposed to make idols. We're not supposed to pray to graven images. What happens is, even something that bad, God still forgives. And that's an epitome of slichot, is that when you do something bad, God still forgives. In the Talmud, Rosh Hashanah 17b, our next text, I think this is really beautiful, because the text in Hebrew says, Kol zman sheYisrael chot'in. Anytime the Jewish people commit a chet, which is a sin, something that you could have done better, that you didn't do really well, let them act before me in accordance with this order. Let the prayer leader wrap themselves in a prayer shawl and publicly recite these 13 attributes of mercy, and I will forgive them. But what I find really interesting here is, whenever the Jewish people sin, it doesn't say, let them recite the Shlosh Esrei Midot. Let them recite the 13 attributes before me, right? It says, let them act before me. And I thought that's rather interesting because, we go to Slichot services. I've never been to Liobek Temple Slichot services, but I imagine it's going to be a time to recite the Shlosh Esrei Midot. But what the Talmud here is telling us is that actually, you should probably recite the Shlosh Esrei Midot, but you actually have to just act. You have to act the Shlosh Esrei Midot. You actually have to do something. So the question is, what does it mean to do compassion? Or what does it mean to do justice? Or any of these elements of the 13 attributes? What does it mean to be kind? Or to forgive someone else's transgression? Or to forgive someone else's sin? So these are questions that we're going to grapple with. And I'm going to allow us to get into small groups of 2, groups of 3. And I have 2 guiding questions for us. The 2 guiding questions are, definitely I would probably read the Exodus 34 passage, the 13 attributes again, and really ask yourself and your chevruta, what attributes resonate with you and which do not resonate with you? And if there were attributes that you might want to add, what attributes would you add? And then the second question is, how do you strive to embody the 13 attributes in your own life? How do you go from just reciting them to acting them? So we're going to take about all that, and we're going to take probably 5 or 6 minutes. If it helps, pick one question and dive deeper into that one. So we're going to take 5 or 6 minutes and go. We'll take this is our 2-minute warning. Our 2-minute warning. So if there's someone in your chavruta that hasn't shared yet, feel free to share. This is our 2-minute warning. These are the 13 attributes. Well, some rabbis count them in different ways. Sometimes. Take about 10 seconds to finish up your thought, and then we'll come back together. Okay, we're going to come back together. We're going to have a brief opportunity to share. If there's anything that really struck you from your chavruta conversation, whether it's something that you shared that came up for you, or if it's something that you heard that you found really compelling about the 13 attributes, or about how perhaps you wish to embody the 13 attributes in your life, I'd love to offer the opportunity for folks to share. Yeah, Gary.
First of all, can you count the 13? What are the actual 13?
Michael asked me the same question. It's not easy.
Yeah.
There are different. There's a machloket on how to count them.
All right. So the debate we had was the notion of kindness to the 1000th generation, but punishment to the 3rd and 4th generations. What's the significance of that? We were trying to think that perhaps kindness is embedded in the punishment. I'm sorry. I am on my medications. I'm handing them this.
Good. That means it's working. It's working. Good. Beautiful. What else? Anything else that you're taking away from your chavruta conversation? I don't know.
Okay. I couldn't figure out what would qualify as something that would go down to 1,000 generations of your children. If the destroying, building a calf and whatever, if that's not, I mean, what, murder isn't, the whole point of Rosh Hashanah is you come every year and you ask for forgiveness. So but they don't tell you, right? You're supposed to guess. I don't know what would be so terrible, but they don't tell you? Do they tell you?
So your question is, well, let's hear from Marguerite too.
Yeah, I was going to say that we sort of brought up the idea of reparations as something that would go to the third or fourth generation, like in the U.S., talking about like reparations for slavery or things like that as an example.
Sure. So what Marguerite said is to honor the perhaps third or fourth or fifth or thousandth generation. An example is like reparations, is like offering money or services or compensation to recompense to people who have been harmed in 4 or 5 or 6 generations.